I'm Philip Alderfer. Welcome everybody to another First Friday Speaker Series event. I am thrilled today to introduce Gabi Brennesholtz. Gabi, good morning. How are you?
I'm super fantastic. How are you, Philip? Thank you for having me.
It's absolutely our pleasure. And co-host is always Jason Flynn. Jason, how are you?
Fantastic.
You are fantastic. Always. That's as always. Jason lives in beautiful Santa Cruz, and if you get to live in Santa Cruz, that's a pretty beautiful day.
It's not so beautiful anymore. Now it's just like we had a week of summer, and now it's just like cloudy. We were gloomy all June, July, a little week or two in there in August of sun. Now we're back to gloom. So whatever.
Preaching to the choir, baby. That was Alaska this winter as well. All right. I'm Philip Alderfer, co-host here at Powered by Cloud and the First Friday Speaker Series. Gabi, for those of folks who don't know you, we were just starting to have a little bit of a conversation before we hit record. For those folks who don't know you, tell our audience who you are, other than being a musician, a coach, an investor, an owner. We've got all sorts of things we could say. What's the 30 seconds we need to know about the amazing Gabi Brennesholtz?
Hi, oh my, you really must have Googled me, Philip. Well, hi everyone. Currently, I'm based out of Knoxville, Tennessee, just outside of Knoxville, in a beautiful lake, with my husband and with our dog. And I know we'll be coming back to the dogs later. Yes, the stories are true. I once was a jazz musician, fell into real estate. I was a producer a decade ago, and I had the pleasure of being a MAPS coach full-time for the last 8 years before I joined Brett Tanner, Gary Keller, Jason Abrams, and KW Wealth to become the director, which is a position that I hold now while still having the pleasure of coaching a few executive clients through MAPS.
Perfect. I love that. And today we're talking about the 3 critical steps to wealth and kind of broad themes. And Gabi, I'm going to let you kind of lead the conversation, but I did want to touch on the 3 things that we see a lot, right? And from a coaching perspective, right? The power of having a plan and then creating some accountability around that plan, and then having a tribe, having the resources to help either fill in the gaps in your knowledge or education or keep you on track along the way. And maybe we could begin just with a little bit of your own, if you share a little bit of your own personal wealth journey, because I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with, not the first day when it was a beautiful day in Bonn, Germany when I was born. I'll fast forward to all of it to say that my childhood I did not come from money, Philip. I was one of those children that had a key around. I grew up with dad. Dad was just trying to make ends meet. And so I grew up with a certain perception around money. It wasn't enough, right? You had to work extremely hard to make and keep it, and that you should keep it in your savings account where you can see it so that over time, hopefully you'd have enough someday to be able to do this thing called retirement. So I worked really hard throughout school and ended up getting scholarships to be able to move from Germany to the US and to study what ended up being music education and jazz history. And so I think in some ways there was connectivity between my mindset around money or hard work and discipline, and ultimately getting into the workforce or getting those degrees without having to pay for it, right? Because they had to be a different way for me to get to have a job and a career, which ended up being, music as my first job. And after I realized that it wasn't just all about being in front of children and executing on the curriculum, but there were things involved like parents and districts and lack of funding for music, I woke up and I realized, wow, money really isn't everywhere. And so I continued to work really hard as a teacher to receive grants, right? So I became pretty good at writing and receiving scholarships for the school districts. But as I continued to do it, I just kept thinking I wasn't making any money. I was working hard 11 months out of the year as a music teacher, marching band and choir, right? All the festivals and things we went to. And I woke up one day and decided I needed a complete career change. So of course, what do you do with a master's degree in music? Real estate,
real estate, of course, logical connection. Yeah.
Tagging, I'm certain, right? So I fell into real estate, and my incredible team leader at the time in Southern Oregon, who did the needs analysis with me, said, look, our brokerage isn't number one in the area, but the one thing we have are pillars of education. So if you decide to join our company, we can help you to become this illustrious thing called a millionaire real estate agent. So I fell into real estate and had the pleasure of just learning from Gary's models and systems. And along the way, right, totally different mindset around money, because when you start doing those activities and you start seeing your gross commission revenue come in, it changes the way that you perceive how difficult it is, or maybe not, to make money. And so I think all of these little pieces came together over the last 15 years of my life to change the mindset and the belief around what money can do and how money can be obtained. And then with the money that I was starting to make as a producer, I ended up saving a bunch. So now I had it in the savings account. So that was no longer a challenge. I have no idea what to do with it, right? So the next logical thing that I thought I would do at the time with my ex-husband was to buy a rental property. Why? He was a college music professor and we wanted to house musicians close to the university. And that was really my first foray into asset class beyond my primary residence. We had always owned, we both had jobs right out of college, but that was the first investment property. And we ended up not purchasing that said investment property, but we ended up getting into rentals in other areas as we were building our expansion teams. And so that was really the first time that I realized, when I buy these investment properties, not only do I have to work for that active income anymore, there's also cash that comes back to me, and I have these tax advantages that I can subscribe to, right? So that was all brand new to me. Yeah.
But your first money lesson was money comes from hard work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'd love it.
Obtain. It's
to
hard.
obtain. Yeah. To obtain money, money is a result of hard work. I would love it if someone would throw into the chat, or anybody wants to throw into the chat, like what their first money lesson was, because I think for a lot of folks, the way we think about building wealth is work. And we think the first step is we have to trade time, work for that money. Giving less of it to me. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. That's good.
And how many real estate agents do we know that that's their plan? Their escape strategy is exactly what Gabby just said about, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to accumulate money in an account. And once that account gets to whether the number's 4 million, 5 million, 10 million, whatever, once it gets there, then I'm good. Okay, then I'm good. Now I know I can coast because I literally just talked to someone last week. They're in their 70s. They were a big agent in their market. They're now winding down because they're like, I'm done. Like I sold enough. I hit my limit. I hit my number. And now I can coast on that money. And it's like, good Lord, that's a lot of hard work and a lot of decades for being able to coast. Seems like backwards plan.
Yeah. I love that Coco said that the first lesson was money is stressful, right? How often do we hear that? Not only of this job that I may or may not like, I got to stand in front of a bunch of squeaking, screeching children playing musical instruments, and I'm not. And then having the money itself it's not enough. I got to stretch it, whatever the story is.
I mean, the thing I didn't realize back then, Philip, was my childhood environment was feeding that too. For example, in elementary school, one of the big deals in Germany was that once a year we would go out and we would go door knocking for UNICEF. So everybody got little tin can where you could put in. And so I knocked probably 2,000 or 3,000 doors when I was 8 or 9 years old. I didn't know that then, but it really helped me as a producer.
Really? Exactly.
Covered. And I would show up and I'd do my little thing and everybody would give me money and I would win these prizes at school, right? So again, that was that reinforcement of, okay, if you do the thing that no one else is willing to do, you win prizes. So.
You win prizes. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I remember those. We didn't have the tin cans, but when I was a kid, we did have it almost looked like a McDonald's Big Mac or a Happy Meal box, the UNICEF box that was part of the Halloween. Yeah.
Ours was chocolate. We had to go selling chocolate to people. It wasn't even asking for donations. It was
I do that as a marching band director too. We sold chocolates.
It's I'll sell you this terrible chocolate bar, but it says it's the best on it.
That's right.
World's best chocolate.
World's best chocolate bar. World's best chocolate bar. All right. So you have these initial lessons. You go through an early stage in your real estate career. Now you're beginning to accumulate some capital. You accumulate money. You said something really interesting, which is that you saw your bank account start to grow. Did you always have a savings habit?
Yes. And it was, but it wasn't it came from scarcity and fear driven by my upbringing. Right? The idea was if we ever had more money than month in our household, it was saved. It was in my dad's savings account. As a single parent, he was trying to make ends meet. Yeah. And everything I had, I was able to earn in terms of pocket money was hard earned by cleaning the whole house at a young age, detailing this car, running errands. And so I would end up supplementing that by delivering, newspapers in the hometown. And all these little pennies became such a habit for me that later on after college, because I had no college debt with the scholarships I was able to receive, this hamstring mindset, right? Financial hamstring very much became what I would say my biggest mental challenge in life. And that pattern prevailed as I, started living in a career that had unlimited possibilities.
Yeah. How did that carry forward? How did that scarcity, that hold it close piece, how did that carry forward even after you were living in, say, greater abundance? Where did that show up?
On my business P&L, Philip, if you were to be able to see my first MAPS coach, it took me a hot minute or 10 to realize that there were such things as investments in people, that there was such thing as faith and models and ROI based on pre-existing models. And that was really, really difficult for me to understand because all I knew was spend less, hold everybody accountable to the same drive that you grew up with, Gabi. And I'm here to tell you, Philip, that also cost me some really incredible talent and relationships because I am and I was very hard on my people.
Got it. Isn't that interesting? Right. Those lessons stick. They stick hard. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to
going through these comments real quick about scarcity. It's interesting how many people all have at least a similar, right? You have to work hard for the money. Money is scarce, and now a lot of us are in, I would imagine most real estate entrepreneurs are kind of the first entrepreneur in their family. I'd venture to guess that they're not all coming from these high power, big famous, super rich families, right?
Yeah.
Or at least the agents I know didn't come. And so it's kind of interesting that I wonder if how many of us are like the first piece of the generation or the first generation in several generations to start to change that mindset for the next generation. So getting out of the scarcity and then into abundance, just kind of an interesting thought on a macro level.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, if I add to that, I see this a lot in our community where folks will share with us, I'm the first one, right? I am the first one to pursue the books, to pursue the financial education, to understand compounded uninterrupted returns. And it's having incredible impact, which is why we're so excited to have this community in place now, because that is the journey, right? Wherever you started. And I would venture to guess that most of us start with unhealthy conversations around money, right? Not whether they were intentional or not intentional at home. In my case, they were not healthy. And I just didn't know it until I became the pain that drove me became my passion and my ultimate interest point in money, because I believed there had to be a different way. I saw it, right? Obviously, in our ecosystem, we have so many incredible examples of, in any case, right, whether you're looking for a financial model or a business model, we have nothing but brilliant minds. And I can honestly say that having been part of Keller Williams was the catalyst for my curiosity, because step one was I created a different vision for my financial performance by looking around going, I love what she's doing. I love what he's doing. I'm so inspired by what this coach is coaching to that I created a new framework.
Mm-hmm. And that's a perfect pivot. Before we go there, I just want to remind everybody to throw your comments into the chat. And that's a great question. I would love to know how many of the folks on this call today are like first generation entrepreneurs. How many folks came out of an entrepreneurial family or background versus just being the first one to take that leap? I'd be really curious. All right. So you began to look at money a different way. What did you do first?
Well, first I learned how to read a P&L, which believe it, and about a decade ago, that first MAPS coach, I feel like I need to just pay him royalties now in hindsight, because he went a lot. I think when we were MAPS coaches to a client, that I think a lot of coaches would resonate with that. But I was not an easy client because I ask 1,000 questions. I need repetition to understand a concept. And once I do, I go fast. So I would say my first step was really understanding my business P&L, which ended up translating into understanding the family burn rate, right? Some may call it a budget. At KW Wealth, we call it the burn rate. To understand, do I actually have enough available to go beyond keeping something in a savings account? Now, mind you, at that point, Philip, I had no financial framework because I hadn't found those books yet on some basic models of how much you should have in operating reserves for your personal life. So I was learning this through the lens of becoming an entrepreneur within KW. Before that, I knew none of it.
Got it.
Yeah. So then, of course, the kicker becomes that, as I transitioned from production, I sold my business. I ended up getting divorced, and my ex-husband had been part of the business. So he bought the database, he bought the business, and I became a full-time apps coach at the time. So, and what an incredible way, right, to continue to deepen your knowledge when you now get to be the one to train and hold others accountable to the creation of their financial performance in their P&L budgets, right? So that ended up becoming another part of the flywheel of my financial understanding.
Got it. Got it. So the first step for you was education. Life change then steps in. Now you're moving down this new path. What did you do after that?
I think in a way it felt like I was returning to my essence, because I got that education degree because I love to learn and love to grow in between books and in libraries. And Philip, this may shock you, I am not a people person at all, which is probably part of the reason why I ended up buying a dog-centric RV park, because I care more about the dogs than I can't say this. Well, now it's too late.
Too late now, it's out there. We all know. Yeah.
It's chatting on the internet. Yeah. So that I returned to fulfillment as a coach. Ultimate fulfillment. And I think it ended up showing up in a big way because with the select few that decided in my orbit as a coach to grow big businesses, what ended up surfacing were similar money challenges, right? As they had so much that they didn't know what to do with it anymore. With the additional money, it was sitting commingled, it was sitting in different accounts. And once I saw that, in addition to their pain points, right, of wanting to get off the hamster wheel, wanting to become the kind of leader that could succeed through others so that they could go on a vacation without having to stay close to their phone, dots started to connect in my world. And I thought to myself, what would it look like if I could become the connection for my clients to become financially independent? And I don't know about you, but the only way for me to be able to do it was not to pontificate that, but to find a way to live it.
Okay. Interesting.
So then on the path, through our amazing coaching company, we had started to get into some financial wealth building, resources and books, and had elevated a couple of coaches who had built incredible wealth journeys. I began to lean into that. In addition to that, though, another life event showed up in 2018, which was Hurricane Florence in my hometown back then.
Yeah.
Happened pretty much over the course of a week. Was our town, for the first time since I had lived there, had severe damage, which, as you can imagine, causes emotional PTSD when your house is one of the houses that went unscathed. Yeah. So again, thanks to maps, this is really not supposed to be a maps or a KW advertisement. This is just the story of my life.
Just the story. Yeah.
Bold came into the region, and of course, as a coach and as an associate, we went into the emergency Bold to support the Bold coach. We thought, and this is my now husband and I, who at the time was a full-time maps coach as well.
Yep.
And we walked out of one of the 24-hour action items, the exercise, Philip, where we are supposed to dream big about the things we want.
Sure.
And to future pace ourselves. And funnily enough, both of us had written down that we wanted to buy an RV and travel it. Now, mind you, we had never been in one.
That's okay. Thank you for bringing that up, because I remember this conversation sort of filtering through maps. Do you hear what Gabi's doing? Isn't this cool? I don't think they've ever driven one, though.
That's exactly right. Never been in one. Both of us wrote it down sitting at different tables. So
that is awesome.
Because we're coaches, we have to execute on our commitments.
Yep.
To an RV sales center and went under contract after one test. I hadn't driven it yet. Paul was driving it one time around the lot.
That's fantastic.
And the sales professional told us, you guys are either going to love it and upgrade to a larger rig, different type of rig, or you're going to hate it in 3 months. You're going to come back and we're going to have a screaming fest and I'll take it off your hands. Yeah. Well, we loved it.
Loved it.
We ended up full-timing in it for almost 2 years between 2018 and 2020.
That's amazing. Okay, so how did that pivot to owning what's the name of the park now? What's it?
Four Paws Ground, located outside of Asheville, North Carolina, in the beautiful little town called, well, I say Rutherford, and the locals say Ralston or Rolton.
Got it. So how did owning the RV, coaching on the road, how did that translate to owning the park?
Well, Philip, one of those nights you're sitting around a campfire, and it was actually this brilliant husband of mine, Paul, who looked around, and he's a thinker, he's a high analytic. Mm-hmm. And as he's observing our neighbors and what they're doing, looking at the campfire, looking at his mug, all of a sudden he says, gee, I just wonder how much these campgrounds make. And you know how we say at MAPS, one powerful question can change the trajectory of your life? Yeah. Well, that was that night. So we were in Texas at the time.
Okay.
And it started off this curiosity of us showing up at every campground, talking to managers, talking to the owners when they were there, Googling campground management. I mean, we basically ended up getting a self-study MBA around all things campgrounds. We started subscribing to listings, understanding cap rates at the time. And once we realized how lucrative a well-run RV park can be, we said, we love this lifestyle. We love the people that are part of this community. Why not own one? Mm-hmm. So we bought one.
So you bought one. Amazing.
It's
and that was a
so
journey,
funny.
though. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I know someone else with the same almost exact story where they went on like a month-long break out of the business. The real estate agent goes on a month-long sabbatical, if you will, and they're traveling to these RV parks. And he did it as an exercise with his kids, kind of like as a homeschool thing, to be like, oh, let's break this down. Like, let me teach you about P&Ls, basically. And so they start breaking it down, and they're guessing. How much is this? How much is that? Okay, our space rents this, trying to guess everything. And he's looking at it, and he goes, oh, crap. Like this might actually be really good. He bought that RV park from that guy, like from their trip. And so it's kind of that paying attention, the RAS we always talk about, but paying attention and looking for opportunity. And it shows up. Just funny, you started telling that story. I'm like, maybe that's where I've heard it. No, I know specifically who the other person is.
Well, it's so funny that you mentioned, right? It shows up in your RAS because some of the context from our past was that Paul and I independently had fostered dogs. We've always rescued dogs. And as we kept seeing this listing of the park we ended up buying, Four Paws Kingdom Campground, show up on the internet, we kept overlooking it because it was a niche, right? It was for adults only 18 and over. What we came to find out later is because of the insurance policy, when you allow breeds, right, no restrictions, you can't have kids there, right? It's one or the other. Yep. But we looked at it and we thought 18 and over, dog-centric, this seems too high risk, right? Because the returns, once we received the financials, we thought, this can't be right. I mean, the park was super profitable. It was in great shape. The two previous owners had taken fantastic care of it. And because of COVID, we ended up coming back from the Southeast because we were meandering, in the canyons and in Texas. We came back because all the parks and the state parks were closing for a couple of months, right? This was happening right at the beginning of 2020. And because we were in North Carolina waiting for this COVID thing to pass, we ended up saying, again, one magical night, you know what? The park is in North Carolina. Why don't we drive from the beach, from Emerald Isle to Rutherford just to check out because we're here. And then we did. And then we looked around and thought, this has been on the market for months. Why hasn't this sold?
Yeah.
Just for context, we bought that park at an 11.4 cap at the time.
Wow.
So one financial decision truly, right, created freedom for us when we were able to decide right after the first 2 years of ownership that we could get free. And the lesson in this, I would just share with our audience, is how often do we overlook the diamonds and truly in our own backyard, right? Yeah. Because we ignore the sniff tests based on our values, our core beliefs, and because we're so distracted trying to chase so many different things. And I think that's a big theme in money as well. I see that with my clients too.
Chasing too many different things. Yeah. Just that the shiny object. Yeah.
One of their friends has, is big into crypto, and the other one is huge into Airbnbs, and the next one is, a speaker around storage units. And now, before they know it, they're so confused around their mental models on what to buy. That instead of digging into the financial education needed to become passionate or interested in an asset class, right? Because passion doesn't have to fuel it, but it helps, can sometimes collude what it is that we're doing that then causes, right, so much complexity internally that you don't move forward on anything.
Yeah. And you may or may not be passionate about it, but I would argue that if it doesn't create an emotional reaction in you, it's not going to stick. It's not sustainable, right? Because it's that, why do we get into real estate? Nobody says I got into real estate because I really like writing contracts. We get into real estate because we want freedom and flexibility, right? We want to feel a certain way. So then we can ask, what do we need to do to feel that way? Then we can ask, what's the business that I need to build that would allow me to do those things? And we can connect all the dominoes. Okay, so how did you and Paul begin to put together your wealth plan? Because it sounds a little bit opportunistic, but also it was research-based, but the park itself was opportunistic, and I know that's not the only thing you do. So how did the two of you begin that process, the planning
absolutely. Process? I mean, and I'm so glad you go there, Philip, because it is a family affair, right? Wealth building is a family conversation, and it becomes something where once you truly align with your partners or the folks that love and care for your wealth building journey in life, is when the trajectory really begins. When we got together, Paul, my husband, actually has a financial degree. So he's a high analytic who understands numbers at a high level, who had subscribed to a rather traditional financial approach. Why? Right, that was his upbringing in his family. Stocks and bonds were great. 401ks were great, right? He had a SEP IRA. He was, he is an incredible coach, was an incredible MAPS coach. And we had the savings rates figured out. So as I was coming out of my journey with the business cell, we got together, and I'm much more entrepreneurial than he is, and I would venture to say I'm also more high risk, right? It's what makes us a great team, because I'm willing to, once I understand the plan, I'll go, and he's the one who'll say, slow down, slow down, slow down. So bringing that together to identify, okay, well, what makes these types of investments important to you versus me, was a weekly conversation that began. We used to call them Friday financials. They've now since moved to Manic Mondays. So where we were on the scale, and we create conversation first. And really, again, Philip, in the beginning, there wasn't this grand plan, right? Nobody had specifically said you should track your net worth, until one time on one of the calls that he and I were on with other coaches. We were masterminding, and it became a thing, right? It became a hot topic to know what the net worth statement was. And one of our great coaches, Tony DeCello, asked our group, what would it look like if you created 10,000 a month, a week, a day, an hour, passive income? And again, it just was one of those moments where the student was ready to dream big and to build a mental model that would help us see how this is possible. At KB Wealth, we call it the $50 million net worth plan, but it really is just a placeholder for what Gary teaches us, which is just to think and dream big. And honestly, we had never done that as a family. We just thought we were going to be okay, right? Because we had jobs, we've had good careers, and we were always saving more than we were keeping. And the funny thing about that became that year that we ended up buying the park and this COVID thing happened, I think it amplified the connectivity to our money, because we were seeing what could happen at the blink of an eye when there's something that's outside of our control happens to the whole world.
Yeah, interesting. Somebody throw in the chat who their wealth partner is. Could be a spouse, could be. I'd be curious to know how many of you have a wealth partner that serves for you like the role that Paul did for Gabi. Because so now you start dreaming. When did the dream become substantive? Is that the word? How did that translate into action steps, into next plans?
I would say it was the biggest leap of faith and execution was the park, because that was the time when we sold other investments and assets to be able to create the down payment for something like an RV park, right? The interesting thing at the time too was that with commercial loans, again, this is all, imagine this world of COVID we're now starting to merge into, not get used to yet. This is at the beginning, right at the beginning. Lenders would only lend on RV parks to first-time RV park business owners if you had a substantial down payment. So it forced us to exchange, sell other assets we had, and truly to put our financial eggs into this one basket. Why? Because we had done so much research at the time that we knew that the RV park industry had never gone under, even in oil crises, other world events, wars. RV parks have always been okay to exceptional. We knew going into the purchase that once the state parks would get the lifts from the state governments again to be able to receive visitors, private businesses would be okay again. And that's exactly what happened. Now, what we ended up not anticipating was, of course, the following 2 years during COVID, people were so eager to get into nature, and especially to do it with their dogs, that the business ended up exploding during COVID time, which is, of course, another thing that ended up significantly accelerating the wealth building journey.
I hadn't connected the dots that RV parks I would have thought they would not have been a stable business. I would have pictured them as being, I don't know, tied to oil prices or something. That's interesting.
We thought so too, and so we started to do research through the professional associations for RV park owners, the professional associations for RV builders, motorhome builders, and even in the worst of times, oil prices have not had a significant impact. Meaning folks would go out of business, or you couldn't pay your bill anymore, because it's a cultural manifestation of how Americans like to live. They like to drive, right? And that is part of the American free spirit that has ultimately ended up bleeding all over the world, including, Germany, which is my home country. And nowadays, when I go back, I see these huge rigs that barely fit on these tiny European streets anymore because it's such an urge, I think, for us to be more connected to nature in a world of Zooms and technology.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jason lives in California. He knows car culture. I mean, that's.
And I know a RV park coming up for sale soon. So, if you need something near the ocean, call me.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. All right. So let's just pause here for a second. If someone's at the planning stage and you're going to give somebody advice on the first things to do or the first things not to do when you're thinking about putting together a plan, where would you begin, or what are the mistakes you would want someone to try and avoid?
Yeah, we hear that a lot. I mean, my first step suggestion would be step on the scale, right? A lot of us don't know what our floor is, meaning we don't know what our net worth plan is, and we don't know what our budgets or burn rates are. It sounds so fundamental, but knowing, right, to have a baseline of where you're starting, because what I've often discovered with my clients is many of them start at negative something, right, because they have a ton of consumer debt. They don't actually keep a lot in operating reserves because they never understood why they want to have 6 to 12 months, or why even 6 to 12 months is such a big range. So I would offer anybody who's listening, just get your baseline in order, right? Once you know what your baseline is, your next step might be that you want to figure out what your security needs to look like, right? That monthly burn rate, so that if you had that coming in 12 months out of the year on a monthly basis, that your family would be okay. Now that is going to be a net, right? So you may have to add in taxes as money is coming in from your various investments, but that's almost already, getting to PhD level thinking about it. But for now, just then know your burn rate, and then figure out what that would be on an annualized basis. And then I would also, because vision is the starter of all high level performance, Philip, I would also ahead and think about your cash flow journey in 3 levels: security, or the survival level being level 1, comfort though being the kind of level where if you were to live the next level lifestyle, whatever that is, you would add in those incredible vacations, things that you would want to do to save up for your kids or your spouse's education, wild experiences, build that in, and be aware what that second pillar of cash flow looks like. We call it lifestyle. And ultimately that freedom cash flow, right? Now we're going to go crazy, right? We're going to build in the legacy plan. You're going to give a ton of money to charities, causes, your neighbors, dogs, and you're going to figure out what that third level is that is going to create your ultimate wealth or freedom lifestyle.
Yeah.
The reason why I encourage new folks to wealth building to be clear in those 3 levers is because it's like when you run a relay race, Philip, or a marathon, knowing what the mile markers are may continue to help you drive that vision forward, because there's something new to strive to as you start achieving some of those passive income goals. Yeah.
And I love that marathon metaphor. I mean, as a runner, I love the marathon metaphor, and it also helps the pacing piece, right? If you don't know where the mile marker is, it's easy to either run too fast at the beginning or start off too slowly, right? You can't gauge your effort if we don't have some benchmark that we're trying to target.
I'm such a big fan of markers or indicators, key performance indicators, which is why we have this template at KW Wealth, and we have financial tools at Maps that represent something like a 30-year plan. Again, why 30 years, why 50 million in net worth is because we are just asking you to think big. And let's say, right, because the way that you may want to save money, Philip, or have those uninterrupted passive compound returns will look vastly different from mine, right? Just by premise that I have an RV dog-centric park, and I don't, right? So we have totally different baselines based on how we're generating cash flow today. So having a plan, it is helpful for you. And this is also why we don't add in those automatic math equations into the sheet to gain connectivity around some of the assets that may be of interest to you, to see based on how much you will now know, because you will have done your burn rate or your budget, how much money is left at the end of the month versus what some of the things you're currently doing, how long it would take you to get to your cash flow of security first, of comfort, of wealth third, right? And so you start playing with these numbers, and what you'll realize, I'm sure, Philip, you have the same realization based on some of the things you end up modeling out for that extended period of time. You may either go, oh my goodness, I'm going to get there so much faster than I thought, or to go, no, keeping that money in my checking account I don't make enough money to save for that.
Yeah.
Right? That's why you got to build the plan.
Yeah.
And that's in Tony Robbins' book, Money. He has an example where he's doing one of his events and they're talking about how much money do you really need. And some younger guy stands up and talks about, I need $100 million or whatever. I'm kind of making up the numbers, but you get the idea. Yeah, I need $100 million. And he's like, okay, why? It's like, well, I want a private jet. I want my own island. I want this, 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 and this. And so he goes through the exercise with him, breaks it down. And he says, okay, like you don't really need a private jet. You want to fly on private jets. Maybe that's 24 flights a year. This is how much money you need. Don't buy an island. That's kind of just silly. Rent an island. Here's how you do it. And then you get different islands. And he breaks it down. The guy needed $10 million, not $100 million. And when we look at it, we say, even getting to 10 million, that could be a big jump for, I mean, it is for me. It's for a lot of people. But getting to 100 feels absolutely impossible at the moment. So even truly understanding what does that number really look like when you truly break it down just makes it easier.
That's right.
Like, oh, I don't. It turns out I don't need $100 million. Probably 50 is half. That's a lot more attainable than 100 in my current mindset.
Well, you know what's so crazy about that is, like we have done the math at KW Wealth, and here's a huge spoiler alert that if someone were to simply purchase 2 rentals a year at 350 in today's interest rate environments, and they got a 6 to 8% cash on cash return, they'd be at 50 million in assets in 30 years, right? That is the most simple answer. And so when you think about that, and you think that your average realtor who will build up the ability to save up for those down payments, right? That is so achievable. And this is just one way to think about that asset class. Yet, right, then I think where people stop is they hear this and they go, okay, I'm going to do my best to do it. But then they forget that they may not be the person yet to be able to save $15,000 a month or $10,000 a month for those down payments. You grow into that person because now you have vision, right? You have a visualization of the asset class or the thing that can be your plan of execution. And then you build up to those habits that help you become the person that can execute on something that may sound so simple, right? It's just 2 houses a year. And
2 houses a year.
It's simple, not easy.
Yeah. So step on the scale. Step on the scale and articulate those 3 pillars. Lifestyle. Yeah, I want to make sure I get the word. Lifestyle first. No, or burn rate first, then lifestyle, then. Exactly.
And we call, the initial burn rate of wherever you are today, that your safety, right? Because that's how you're living today. We're not asking you to actually take anything away of your current burn rate. We are just asking you to identify what it is, right? So if you're the person, not the latte factor conversation. If you have the drive to go to Starbucks every day, build it in, and then over time, find an asset or an investment that could fund that $7 a day. I don't even know what it is these days, a day, so that you feel really great about that part of your burn rate.
Yeah. I'd be curious. I'm going to ask folks, throw in the chat a scale from 1 to 5. 5, I know it exactly. 1, I have no idea what I couldn't even tell you. I'd be guessing. How well do you know your current burn rate? 5 being total knowledge, 1 being total ignorance. I'd be curious. I would say for me, it's probably, if I was being honest, I would say it's a 3. It feels like it should be a 4, as in, I think I know what I do all the time, but I'm 100% sure I don't actually know what I do all the time, right? I know I go here, and I know I like to go to the bike store, and I know but what do I actually spend? I'm not entirely sure.
And I think the reality is for many of us, that is the case until you decide that you're also going to build some systems into your financial life, like Financial Fridays is a big one for us.
Yeah.
First of the month or as close to it, to the weekend for us to revisit this. And Philip, you already know this about me, but I'm just obsessed and crazy. I have a little folder. This was not planned, audience, but it lives on my desk so that every day when I wake up, or every Friday when I get into my Friday financials, I have printed materials around my budget, around my wealth plan. And as I'm updating, I'm stepping on the scales at a level of frequency, which for me still is almost weekly, Philip. I'm sure I could do it on a monthly basis, yet I just subscribe to Gary Keller's belief of looking at your numbers every week because it's worked for me, right? Because what it does is it removes flexibility around my money so that when something is out of whack, or when I know something is coming up, extraneous expenses, vacations coming up, right, holidays where I want to spoil my godchildren or my dog, then I can plan ahead of it because I'm thinking about my money on a weekly basis outside of the whirlwind of paying that bill or making sure that, that credit card payment went through. It's a different money.
And that's a perfect pivot then to kind of the second theme. So we build a plan. We have a plan in place. We understand what our numbers are. How do we stay on top of it? You suggested right away that weekly conversation. What does successful, as in it helps people get to the outcome they want? What does successful wealth planning look like?
I wish I could give a black and white answer, and I'm going to tell you is however you are driven in areas of life that already show you that you are successful in that thing, maybe the level of frequency you may want to pursue. Here's what I mean by that. I have an incredible set of clients, husband and wife team, that really wanted to get healthy. And for years, right, we followed James Clear's Atomic Habits books and beliefs to say, if you want to get healthy, step one is you got to get into the gym. And in order for you to get to this point of health, you're probably gonna have to go to the gym 5 or 6 times a week, right? So just the activation energy it took for them to make the trip to the gym was almost a daily check-in point with me, right? Did you get up this morning? No, I overslept. Okay, great. What are the activities you're going to do to make that up? Well, put on those tennis shoes and just walk on the street. It's the same with money. Depending on where you are in your current journey, if you don't know what your burn rate is, right, you may decide to look at your burn rate more than once a week for now, because maybe it's not just your burn rate. Maybe it's your kids having crazy subscriptions on Netflix and Amazon and all the things that kids do, and you're not aware because once a month, when your intention is to get into your money time block for an hour, you realize it's in all these different places. And it may take you 4 or 5 to get there, and then you're already out of time because you're overwhelmed. Is anybody with me?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Jason Abrams talks about his kid's Fortnite spending a lot, right?
Yeah, and if you saw, right, the burn rate of what I spend on my dog, and when we go to, because we still love to travel, right, how much we spend on him, I go cross-eyed, right? So he is literally part of the future savings bucket now because I can't handle this on a monthly basis. I just know when that bucket ever goes below what it needs to be, it's probably my dog's fault. Of course, it would never be mine, Philip, and I need to replenish that. Right? But to
No
answer
judgment.
Level of frequencies, I would say depends on your level of obsession, right? I'm a pretty obsessed person now over financial success for others and for my family. So I still look at it weekly.
Okay. And it's looking at what? What specifically are we doing in that Friday conversation?
It's looking at the net worth statement every week.
Okay.
It is looking at performance of all assets every week. And I will actually tell you, Brett Tanner does this even more frequently, right? So there's a correlation between those who have a lot. He does this. He will look at his cash flows every day, look at his deployable monies every day, and then he will make decisions with his, financial team or the folks who make his money work now every day. It's just checking in on your key performance indicators, right?
Okay.
Like our clients, right? If you have any clients in your world, Philip, I'm sure I'm the only coach that have a resistance to numbers and tracking. There's a direct correlation between those who I can call right now and ask, how many appointments do you guys still need to set by the end of the week versus calling another client and they go, I don't even know how to access my CTE. I don't know. Yeah. Probably one person may be on goal, the other is also somewhere.
Yeah. Jason, I'd be curious. I'm going to ask you a question just right on that point. From your experience as a team leader, if we would have taken a survey of the market center, in rough terms, how many agents know their numbers in their business? So just say from the market center perspective.
In the real estate business?
In the real estate business, yeah.
10%. Know it at the level that we talk about, or the level that we really want them to know it. I mean, 10 to 20% at the most, right? And that's I would even say my perspective might be skewed a little because being in a high volume market, we do see agents kind of you can coast a little bit further off of not really knowing your stuff. But then we go to mega camp and you hear people get up there and they just know the number. Yeah. And always in a row of people, no matter what market I've been in 4 different market centers. Every time it's people go, oh, I have no idea what mine are. And the people at Family Reunion Mega Camp are usually the ones that are a little bit, they're at least producing. I'd say, and the people that are, not to kind of toot our own horn, but the people that are at companies that aren't even talking about business this way, almost zero. A lot of top producing agents I talk to outside of the company, a lot of times the discussion just isn't even being had about what are your real numbers.
What are your real numbers?
And getting
So Gabby,
about it.
Sorry, cut you off. Gabby, I'm curious. So if say 10 to 20% of realtors know their number in their business, when folks come into the KW Wealth community, how many of them know their numbers on the wealth front? Like, is there a parallel? Are we good in one way and do we fall apart in another, or do we see these patterns repeat?
Oh, we absolutely see the patterns repeat. Absolutely. And I think this is also why we've had such an incredible growth in our community, because people realize that step one may even be just to surround themselves with the conversations. We get a lot of folks. We have a special coaching corner once a week where folks specifically are invited to join the conversations all around creating the burn rate, all around building a 30-year plan with someone who's holding their hand, because we have coaches on demand that will help them with that. Because even just the demonstration of, hey, I do it, I'll show you what a 6% depreciation look like. I'll show you why I think about it this way in this asset class. And I'll show you how you are going to have to build in, debt service so that actually, that 6% depreciation rate minus your cash flow is actually, right? All these little things are a different language that we begin to speak. And the reality is, Philip, that when we have new members join, many of them are super overwhelmed, right? Because they say, this is all just Chinese. Well, but the great thing is you've already been there as a human before, right? You had that kind of level of humility when you were born and you were learning whichever language your primary was. You did this by babbling, and you weren't afraid to babble. You probably sounded like a baby. And then you started to learn one word, not even a sentence. So I don't know if it was the first word of the sentence or the last, you just spoke the word. And you grow into that over time. What's really cool about that is the members that we've had that have been with us now for 13, 14 months, since inception of the community, that babbled or virtually didn't speak the language are now doing things. We just had this incredible mastermind at Camp. We had a panel, like sets of panelists that a year ago weren't doing any of the things they were now talking about in some sense, preaching and teaching about.
Yeah.
Brett has taught them over the last year. Well, it's because they came with a beginner's mindset. They did get the financial education. They executed on reading the books, following the calls, being part of an environment until they finally started to begin to speak that language because they executed.
Yeah. Get into action. Okay, so let's finish on that piece, that importance of a tribe, right? So if the first step is to build a plan, the plan looks like stepping on the scale and then thinking about those pillars. The second piece is tracking and some rhythm around those KPIs in your life. What are you spending? Where's your cash? What's it doing? How do you build a tribe? Or talk to me, I guess, maybe first about the importance of a tribe. What is having somebody else in your corner do specifically for the wealth building journey?
And actually, if you'll allow me just to go one more step back to the pillars.
Absolutely.
Cash and the plan. I think it's really important to know, because we focus so much on the numbers, right, and the money coming in. We call all of that business management in KW Wealth, right, because it's one of the 8 pillars that ultimately make up your stool. But very, very basically speaking, I would encourage everybody today to think about your business management. That is the business of your own life, right? Because you're running a family office, whether you know it or not. Right? Making it rain, right? You're running a family office, and the mindset of a family office is, right, you have to understand your business management, and you have to understand your legacy plan and your insurance protections, right? So I would also encourage you, as you're starting to think about building a plan, that the reason we talk about having a financial team or a tribe in place is all that as your wealth grows, so will the target on your back, right? Whether it's creditors, clients who know you have, or tenants who may know that you have a lot of rentals, so they think you have a lot of cash if they actually trip on an IC day, right? Think about your financials and your legacy management, right? So protections and insurance kind of go into this idea of building a plan, which takes us to, this is why it's so important to be surrounded by folks who have done this before or who are professionals in the thing you're trying to accomplish, right? So if you're thinking about who should be part of your financial team or how do I find these people, well, all of us likely have someone like a bookkeeper or a CPA, a person that hopefully doesn't just file our taxes, but somebody who has an understanding on how to do that, and an insurance broker, right? And over time, as you become familiar with more and more of the financial concepts that are important to you and your legacy plan, you will top grade those environments because you start to ask better questions, and you likely realize when your environment can no longer answer those questions or are unwilling to get those questions answered for you. right? And
Yeah,
so,
we don't know all that we need to know. Other people can be expert. Yeah,
well,
let other people be. Yeah.
that's right. And here's what's so rich about that too, though, Philip. I'm not expecting my accountant to know all the things that I'm learning now, right? I'm now in business with a man who's built an incredible hard money lending business, right? And she may know how to be able to do that at a tax advantageous way. But when Brett comes up with a new business idea or a way to do things, right? I now go back to my accountant. She goes, I don't know the answer to that, and let me find out. And this is the kind of relationship that I would also want out of your environment, whether these are professionals, right, that are by your side, that have the certifications to help you with your protections or with your wealth management. And on the flip side of your tribe, right, I would suggest you go back to what Gary teaches us, which is to be surrounded by, you're the sum of the five with whom you surround yourself with. And you're going to have those who are willing to mentor you or coach you in your market center, in your office, in your church community, in your community, that are along the path, much farther. And it's the way that they behave, right? Or the way that you start picking up that they think about wealth that may inspire you. And sometimes, like, I think the simplest thing, Philip, is to follow the urge to start asking them some questions, or just to have them tell you their life story, because you'll pick up a lot of patterns. And then on the other side too, to find someone who you can mentor, even if mentoring means, like, I have one of my clients, Philip, who mentors college students around burn rates and building budgets, right? And it's a program they have through their church. She became very, very successful around her own financial journey. And now that is her way to give back. And she's learning so much from these young folks, right, who are very much growing up in a different environment than we probably did as kids.
Yeah.
Hearing from her. And so, right, you create that symbiosis because you teach and you surround yourself with those from whom you can learn.
Yeah, that idea of mentorship is really interesting, right? When I was running the sales team, the big sales team in the real estate company, I always used to encourage people, take Ignite, assuming that you are going to teach it next quarter, right? That don't just show up to learn something. Show up to learn something so that you can pass on the knowledge. It absolutely changes the way you look at it. I'm curious, throw into chat if you're on the call and hanging out here with us until the very end. I appreciate that. Who is missing in your financial team right now? I would love to know, because I keep hearing the same things, and I'd be curious what that is. And while those answers are popping in, Jason, what questions did we not answer or ask that we should have? What did I forget?
I mean, this is like totally just personal for me. Can you tell us about the KW Wealth, specifically the workshops that you guys do?
Yeah.
So we have 2 workshops. The second one is actually about to launch on September 11th at KWRI in Austin. And the latest one is all around building wealth through flipping models that Brett has lived over the last decade, right? All of us have, I think, a perception of what a flip is, or a quick flip, as we call it. And did you know that there are 6 ways really to think about being able to slice this idea called flipping, right? We call them wholesales. Scaling, though, to also be able to build massive wealth through this idea of finding off-market properties and to be able to run through different models to understand the highest rate of success. So that's what we're going to start launching. It will also live in the country next year, with locations to be announced on our website, mykwwealth.com. And the workshop is, you can regard it as we call it our one-day financial bold experience. It is one day. 6 hours where we're introducing the 8 pillars of wealth in a much slower manner than I did over the last 10 minutes. And really breaking down what it can look like to build a foundation. We give a few examples of how to scale those different foundations, right? Protection, insurance, ideas, and how to do this through residential real estate, first and foremost. And then some creative ways to save money on taxes right away, so that anybody who's joining the workshop can walk away with tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of potential savings.
Got it.
That's one thing I always hear Brett say, right? Is that, or at least, or in the marketing materials, where it's like, taxes are your biggest expense, right? And like you look at like the MREA example, and it's like, no, lead generation, 10%. Well, yeah, sure, that's 10% of gross, but when you're looking at the end of the day, here's your profit left over, and then you're losing 15+%, depending on whoever you are. Like, oh yeah, no, that hurts.
I would and that the wealthiest people that I have in my orbit as mentors and coaches now spend more time on tax saving strategies, right? Whether it's deductions or deferments or never having to pay them, and they spend on how to generate money.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Gabi, what did we not talk about that we should have? First of all, give everybody the website address again, or contact information for you if they want to learn more about the KW Wealth community. Where should they go? What should they do?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you can find me on Facebook. I'm just Gabi Brennesholtz with a long name that's very German. Easiest way to probably remember this is going on mykwwealth.com to be able to access roadshows, to be able to contact me and our incredible team, and to get all the goodies on a value proposition of what it's like to be a community or mastermind member in our world.
Perfect. I think Jason just put that in the chat, so you can grab that there. What did we not ask you that we should have? Any parting thoughts, any final words of wisdom for the crew here today?
I think you two crushed it. It's a huge honor to be in your environment and tribe as well, because it's the fact that you bring in conversations that help folks to think about their wealth building journey and who they may want to surround themselves with is just really, really great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, our pleasure. So, Four Paws Animal Kingdom, Asheville, North Carolina. How do we book a reservation on that? Where do we go there? What's the
hop on that website, fourpawskingdom.com. We are quickly filling up for leaf peeping season, Barco-ween, and our famous Thanksgiving weekend yet. 2024 reservations will be open soon, Philip.
Barco-ween, that sounds like dogs in costumes.
You can find the evidence on our Facebook page, and you will find all kinds of costumes. It's, humans are tolerated, but the dogs are definitely stealing the show.
They're encouraged. Wiener dogs and wiener dog in hot dog costumes, I think, is one of the funniest things on the planet. I'll go down the Instagram, YouTube, TikTok rabbit hole all day.
It has been done before our park.
Yeah, I'm sure. Gabi, thank you again. Jason, good to be with you as always. Thanks to everybody in the audience for joining us today. This replay will go out. Live stream will be available on our Facebook page, the Cloud Coaching page, for a little bit. Replay will be available for the next 30 days. Jason, Gabi, thank you for sharing your time today. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk soon.
We'll see you soon.
Been fun.
Thanks, everybody.